Tech Rundown.
Right, let's go popping across. We've been in the United States. It's time to go to Sydney, Australia. I don't know what accent that was. Davis Fang, good. What is it? What day? Evening.
Evening.
Yes,
it is evening. Good day, everyone.
We've just been in Australia and now we've gone back to Australia.
Yes, we have. You're right. We were in Australia earlier. Dave, it's very good to see you. How are you?
Yes.
Yes. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you all?
Yeah, very good. Very
fantastic.
I'm very pleased to hear it. Now, this is the part of the show that Renee looks forward to every single week, and she can't do it without this particular segment. So, this is, though, a very important story about Apple, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's not exactly been a fantastic week for Apple. Multiple things have happened that have, earned a little bit of dismay in the company. Most of all, Apple is threatening to remove iMessage and also FaceTime, two very much well-used and very popular products from the UK if a certain surveillance law goes ahead. Have we all heard about the Investigatory Powers Act from 2016?
Yeah, but tell us more.
I think a lot of us might be quite familiar. Yes, so that was quite a controversial thing that happened in 2016. It basically forced tech companies to disable certain security features like encryption. However, it would happen under a certain process. However, now there is going to be a certain change, and now it's proposed that these features will be taken away without telling the public. This also enables the storage of internet browsing records and collection of personal information, and this is quite terrible for a lot of people. Currently, the government is in an 8-week consultation process to see if this will actually happen or not. But Apple has submitted a 9-page document condemning the changes. As we all know, Apple's famously very protective of consumer data and security. And they do object to the change where they have to inform the Home Office of new security features that they're implementing before the public gets to know it. And what's even funny as well is that a lot of these features will have to be enabled through a software update so that it won't be so secretive after all. And I think the problem for me is that, sure, it might be something that happens in the UK, but for Apple to implement such a change, the entire world will be affected. And just to enable a backdoor like this for one particular government is not something that Apple or any other large tech company would want to do.
It is extraordinary, and I can see the legislation, what they're trying to do, but at the same time, it then breaches privacy, and then also, I think what it then does is also, and the idea that any government holds all your browsing data, for example, terrifies me. I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't want government meddling any more than they already meddle.
Yeah, precisely. WhatsApp, which is a Meta, and also Signal, also opposed to the proposed changes. However, since it did happen in 2016 and the Investigatory Powers Act did pass Parliament, it seems like that this particular change might unfortunately happen as well. And we haven't heard any word from Google, but they are famously less protective of users' data than Apple is. And this all comes after as well another law that arrived from the EU earlier this week, demanding that smartphones will have to have a replaceable battery by 2027. It just seems like that this European region plus the UK are meddling in Apple's ultimate plans.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
So what apps are people going to lose or potentially going to lose?
If this does go ahead, Apple is threatening to take away iMessage and FaceTime, which are two of the most popular messaging services in the UK, and WhatsApp and also Signal are threatening to leave the market as well.
Yeah, WhatsApp's a big one, actually, because a lot of politicians use WhatsApp,
Yeah.
a lot of because it's end-to-end encrypted,
And
isn't
actually,
it?
if you can't use FaceTime, you go to WhatsApp, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it'd be very interesting
Yeah,
also
exactly.
I think also in terms of leverage, or leverage, as the Americans would say, Apple, I would think, has some clout here.
Yes, a lot of people do use iPhones simply because it does have iMessage, it does have FaceTime, and a lot of people, are just in that ecosystem where they feel like that they can't leave and refuse to become a green bubble friend by purchasing an Android phone. So this will be, terrible for consumers and terrible for Apple as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. Let's move on and talk about Netflix. You and I have talked about this before, about Netflix cracking down on people sharing their passwords, and Netflix was going hell for leather to stop this. Has it worked?
Yeah, so just a couple of months ago, back in May, we talked about how Netflix was expanding its password sharing crackdown. Back then, we were talking about how Netflix sent 4 million people in the UK a letter, either physical or via email, saying that friends and family were no longer able to share their account. At the time, almost a quarter of UK households shared passwords, and 100 million people across the world were doing that. And obviously, this was a bit of a strain on Netflix's struggling finances at the time. And we're also wondering if this password crackdown would either lead to a mass boycott of the service, or if it will increase to lead to increased subscriptions. And it turns out that maybe, unfortunately, that it was a massive success. Over the past quarter, 6 million new signups globally the Netflix achieved, which was the fastest growth that they've seen in many years, since lockdown, in fact. And it just goes to show that because of this success of the lockdown, other services like Disney Plus, like Hulu, might do a similar thing as well. And in addition to that, in the US, they also just announced that the basic Netflix plan has also been discontinued, and that will force people either to get the more expensive, 50% more expensive, I think, next tier ad-free plan, or go down to the ad-based plan. And I think this just goes to show that maybe streaming isn't as profitable as all these media companies were hoping it was going to be. And advertising might definitely come into the future for streaming platforms as well.
It's interesting, of course, dilution as well. There are so many streaming services now available, for example, Apple TV, and you've got Netflix, and you've got Amazon, and all sorts as well. So, and in fact, for the consumer, they're spending more and more money on those streaming services, and it's no wonder they're sharing the passwords. But clearly, it is having an effect. Let's move on and talk about, and this is a bugbear of mine, car infotainment systems.
Yes, it turns out that customers, funnily enough, are growing increasingly frustrated with in-car infotainment systems, according to the latest JD Power survey. Now, if you haven't heard of it, and I do understand it is a little bit niche, and the JD Power survey is basically the largest new car satisfaction survey in the world, and they report their results every year. And this year, it seems like that the two biggest customer complaints are both styling and the infotainment as well. So I understand, David, you own a Tesla, and I think a lot of people do believe that they're not the prettiest cars in the world. And it's also the infotainment is a little bit complicated. But how do you personally feel about it?
Well, I can't use it, quite frankly. It's far too complicated. I just want to press something and you get a song on. Now it's like, being in NASA.
Yeah, no, I have to say that my other half has got a Mustang that's really complex, but I've got Apple CarPlay, which is brilliant.
But that's also our age, maybe. I was really tech savvy. So. Isn't it? Okay, good.
Yeah, well, the survey measures customer satisfaction after 90 days of new car ownership, and this is the first time where there's been a consecutive decline in results over 2 years. And the biggest area of dissatisfaction are the looks, in fact. So a lot of people are saying that the grills on new BMWs are very ugly, Teslas a little bit gormless and uninteresting, and SUVs overall just aren't very pretty. But more interestingly for us, customers do not like the overly complicated payment systems in cars, and they much prefer just to put their phone in and use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And I think it just goes to show that manufacturers should just stop spending so much money on technology and just really leave it to the people who do technology best, Apple and Google, really.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, it's so complicated now, so I'm glad I'm not alone in that. It's the interface, I think, is incredibly complicated.
I think it's the electric cars. They seem to have gone a bit weird with their
Well, I mean,
interface.
I can even have a crackling log fire if I want. I mean, what use is that to me if I'm driving a car?
Not a real one.
No, not a real one. It's a picture and it crowd. Oh dear. Anyway, I'll have to take you for a spin in my car then. Also, this is your final story is a really weird one, if you ask me.
Is it a folding phone?
No, it's not a folding phone. Where is the folding phone
story? It's not quite a folding phone. I've got a folding phone here, but unfortunately that's not the story. It's like the opposite of a folding phone story. So a 20-year-old Palm Pilot has gone viral. Do we remember what a Palm Pilot is?
I've got one. I've got one at home.
You've got one?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's gone viral because it turns out that a Palm Pilot is critical in showing Oppenheimer in IMAX. Yeah, so Oppenheimer, as we all know, is the latest blockbuster that everybody wants to see in IMAX theatre. But there's actually only 70 IMAX theatres that can play 70 millimeters worldwide, just 30. And as we all know, 70mm film is massive. The reel is 11 miles long, but it is an incredibly niche thing. So these machines run off a 21-year-old Palm Pilot, and they've decided not to update it because there's only 30 of these theatres in the world. There's no money in replacing such an ancient machine. But if you ask me, if this old piece of technology works well, then yeah, there's no real need to replace it. And this is something that we've seen a lot of times, actually. Like the McLaren F1 supercar from 30 years ago, McLaren still use a laptop from 1995 to service it. And the computers in the Boeing 737 MAX, it uses computers from 1996 to run, for better or worse. So yeah, there's a case of old technology being used in a whole host of applications, funnily enough.
It's really interesting. You just said you didn't want to hear anything about
I don't want to hear the old computers on planes. I do not want to hear about. I can honestly say that the last 3 minutes of this segment, I have no idea what was just said.
No, right, okay. So well, I'll explain in a minute. I'll explain. So what are they going to do with these IMAXs if they're not going to update the software?
The thing is, an IMAX, theatre is an incredibly simple piece of system to run. It uses very little actual technology. The Palm Pilot, funnily enough, is the most advanced piece of technology in it. And I think because people want such an authentic film look when experiencing 70mm IMAX, there's no real need to update it. However, these Palm Pilots are starting to break, so they are using Windows emulation, so sort of like running a fake Palm Pilot in Windows for some theatres, but I don't feel like that there's a real need to update it. I love my Palm Pilot. I've actually got one somewhere, and yeah, it's just nice seeing a piece of ancient technology still being put in good use.
Yeah, I've got a piece of ancient technology opposite me. Davis, thank you very much indeed. That's Davis Fang there live in Sydney, Australia. I'm going to be in such trouble. That was today's Tech Rundown.
Tech Rundown.